For the purpose of education and training. The meeting will be held for the sole purpose of receiving training with Watson and Associates, Economists Limited regarding development charges, community benefits charges, and inclusionary zoning studies. This meeting can be closed pursuant to Section 239, subsection 3(1) of the Ontario Municipal Act. No member shall discuss or otherwise deal with any matter in a way that materially advances the business or decision-making of this council. I would like a mover. Can I ask Councillor Littleton if she'll move this motion to go in camera? And Councillor Cisco, would you second it?
So moved.
Okay.
All in favor? Okay, to the clerk. Okay, so now the deputy clerk will send us over into a breakout room. There we go.
Nancy? Nope, Councillor Miller?
Hi, am I supposed to be?
Yep, I'm going to get you in there. Hang on 1 second. I
Okay.
just saw you in there.
Sweet, thank you.
Sign to breakout room. Okay. Is Nancy in there? No. Nancy's having a problem.
Yep, there is. You just
Hi, Nancy. Oh, where'd she go? Okay, she's gone. Hello, Anthony. Hi, Anthony.
Hello. Rebecca?
Yep, how are you?
How bad are you?
I'm fine. They're just in the session. Did you want to go in or?
Yeah, please.
It's just training. Okay, just 1 second. I'll sign you if I can figure out how to do it. Give me a second. Put in. Sorry. There you go. Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay, just want to make sure that we're recording. I'll confirm that with the clerk.
Yes, we are.
Okay, and I think we can start with the regular meeting of council. And so we will start with O Canada. So I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to mute, and I'll turn, if everyone can mute, and then I'll turn it over to Evan. Is it just me, or is there no sound?
There's no sound. We're gonna have to start.
That's fine.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Carton bras et porter le paix, il sait porter la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
All right, good afternoon and welcome to regular meeting of council general committee for Monday, October 5th. We begin this gathering by acknowledging the land on which we gather is traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. Acknowledging this reminds us of our great standard of living is directly related to the resource and friendship of our Indigenous people. And I just want to give a special thank you to Elder Jackie Labonte for organizing the Sisters in Spirit Walk yesterday to honor the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls It took place here at City Hall, and the walk went from City Hall to the First Ontario Performing Arts Center, and walks took place across the country to remember and reflect about how so many Indigenous females' lives have been lost, and yet so few people have cared. So it was an important walk, and one that took place in many communities across the country. Just have a couple of things for the mayor's report I just want to touch on, because I know we got a bit of a meeting ahead of us. And I just want to talk just briefly about COVID-19. We've seen a second wave that is taking communities across the country, and specifically in the GTA and Ottawa, Montreal, and Quebec. You're seeing increased numbers. What you're seeing here in Niagara is, while we are seeing increases, is not to the level that you're seeing in the GTA areas. That's something that as a community, I think we should be proud of, but it doesn't mean that we could take our eye off of our diligence when it comes to making sure that we're protecting our community. So as Thanksgiving is coming up, please be mindful of what public health has been saying, both provincially and here in the region, which is to really refocus your efforts to keep your social contacts to a minimum, focus in on your immediate family, and beyond that, try and really rein in your points of contact. It's an important part of containing the virus, and it's also allows public health to do their job when a virus is contacted in the community, for them to be able to reach out to those in the bubble, if you will, of the residents. They're able to do that effectively. And what we're seeing in other communities is that that bubble is actually too big, and it makes it very challenging for public health officials to make that contact tracing. So, you know, the test centers have been overwhelmed in St. Catharines. We do have a pharmacy that is doing testing on Bunting Road. They are getting overwhelmed with calls as well. So we're just asking the public to really be mindful, wear the mask, and the mask is mandatory. And I just want to thank all the businesses that are reminding folks who are coming into their place of business to wear your mask. The restaurants are doing an outstanding job making sure that the protections are in place. The gyms, the yoga studios, the businesses are actually doing their part, which is to keep the residents safe. It's the ones who aren't being mindful of their surroundings, who aren't keeping that physical distancing, who aren't wearing a mask. They're the ones who are actually doing more harm to our community than good. So just as a reminder, as we're heading into what is going to be a great family weekend, do it in a different way, and let's make sure that we continue to do our part as we fight against COVID-19. Last council meeting, council approved a tax relief program to defer property tax payments for non-residential property owners. Applications for this program are now open, and they're for owners of occupied commercial spaces, shopping centers, parking lots, or office properties who can demonstrate financial hardship related to COVID-19. And so you can go to the city's website to apply for this. This is for what we're doing for property owners, business property owners in our community. I had an opportunity to check out the Port Dalhousie piers, and the progress is really coming along. Although COVID did hinder some of the timelines, they do look outstanding. Bronte's doing an amazing job. They are pouring more of the concrete decks, and I know people have been waiting patiently, but I think when they are all finished, everyone is going to be happy to see those piers open, and they are going to look beautiful. And I know Councillor Garcia has been following that all along the way. This is Small Business Month kicking off in October. And so Digital Main Street is a grant that the FedDev Ontario and the City of St. Catharines through Economic Development has in place. It's a grant for small businesses to adapt to the challenges of COVID-19. And it's all about getting businesses more digitized into that virtual online world. Businesses such as Mindbomb Records, Pocket Change, and Little Chief & Co. They've taken advantage of this program, and they're seeing a lot of success. So any businesses out there, check out digitalmainstreet.ca and go to Ontario Grants for the link, and you'll hear more from our economic development. As well, we have a rain barrel and tree giveaway coming up on October 17th. It's still important. Our environment's important, and I want to thank our environmental team for making sure that we can still participate in this in safe ways. So it's going to be at the Seymour Hanna for pickup. You can order online, and once residents have ordered their tree online, they will be given a time slot between 8:30 and 1 o'clock to come pick it up. So let's continue to build that urban forest and get those trees into people's yards on October 17th. And a thank you to Enbridge Gas for its donation of more than 420 combination smoke and carbon monoxide alarms just in time for Fire Prevention Week. And so our Fire Prevention Week kicked off this week. Fire prevention officers will be engaging in our community through social media and other forums to talk about the importance of making sure that they have a working smoke and carbon monoxide systems in their house. And as we saw with the fire that last night, and the chief knows this, there was obviously an individual who was hurt very badly during that fire. But the fire services, they did an outstanding job containing that fire in St. Catharines. So I just want to say thank you to the fire services for their efforts. But it's a great example of why we need working fire alarms in our houses in the city as well. Deputy Mayor Littleton will touch on this later. It's the Foods for Folks, and that's for the folk arts. I'll allow her to touch on that in a bit. And moving on, I just want to say thank you to Walker Industries for their donation of $1.5 million to Hospice Niagara for the development of 2 new palliative care centers in Niagara. And that is an opportunity to talk about Hike for Hospice, which goes until October 17th, where everyone can do it in a different way, hiking in our community and raising funds for Hospice Niagara. I also want to say thank you to Councillor Cisco, who was one of the lead ambassadors for the Niagara Children's Center Superhero Run with Jessica Potts. They raised over $80,000. They, being all the folks who participated in the run, raised $80,000 for children right here in our community. And so they were great ambassadors, and it was great to see the people do it again in a safe, virtual way. And with that, I just want to say thank you to everybody and all the counselors for the work that you're doing. Keep using your social media channels to remind people to look after one another and to also be mindful of their precautions when it comes to COVID-19. So with that, I will look to the clerk to the adoption of the agenda.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, before we adopt the agenda, additional correspondence from the following individuals have been placed in your council sugar sink folder, which is AMO watch file for October 1, 2020, item 3.2 KPMG presentation, and Watson and Associates, your 5:30 workshop presentation, which the mayor spoke of earlier, is in there as well. The following amendments to this evening's agenda: Councillor Garcia has requested to pull council correspondence sub-item 3 to endorse the resolution from the town of Amherstburg. And item 2.3, Budget Standing Committee report, a motion regarding the transition from Budget Standing Committee to General Committee for 2021 operating and capital budget process. The start time for the October 21st meeting, due to a conflict we have in meeting schedules, will go from 6 o'clock to 6:30 p.m. And that's this evening's changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. And now I have a motion. Councillor Garcia, can you move the agenda? Thumbs up.
Yes. Yes,
Seconded.
Mr. Mayor, so moved.
Seconded by Councillor Williamson. All right. All in favor? And that is carried. Any conflicts of interest tonight? Any conflicts of interest? Just a reminder, if you do, you also have to put it in writing to the clerk. I'm not seeing any hands go up. Adoption of the minutes. Councillor Littleton is adopting the minutes for the meeting of council held on Monday, September 14th, 2020, and that council adopt the minutes of the general committee meeting held on Monday, September 14th, 2020. And can I have a seconder, Councillor Miller? Okay, all in favor? There's no changes. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll now resolve into general committee and motion to move reports on consent. Before we do that, is anyone lifting anything off consent? Okay, seeing none, I'll look to the clerk for the consent agenda moved by Councillor Dodge.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this evening's consent agenda: Corporate Support Services, Human Resources 2019 Year-End Status Report on Multi-Year Accessibility Plan. Item 2.2, Financial Management Services, deferred for meeting of March 23rd, which was canceled due to COVID. The Development Charges Reserve Fund Treasurer's Statement, December 31, 2019. Item 2.3, Financial Management Services from the Director. The Budget Standing Committee Report, the meeting of September 21, 2020. Item 2.4, Legal and Clerk Services, Office of the City Clerk, 2021 Deputy Mayor Schedule. Item 2.5, Legal and Clerk Services, Office of the City Clerk, Council Correspondence, save and accept item, sub-item 3. And 2.6, planning and building services, planning services, exemption from draft plan of condominium approval, section 9(3)B of Condominium Act 18 Corbin Street. Councillor Dodge,
Yes.
Councillor Garcia,
Yes.
Councillor Harris,
Yes.
Councillor Kushner,
Yes.
Councillor Littleton,
Yes.
Councillor Miller,
Yes.
Councillor Phillips,
Yes.
Councillor Porter,
Yes.
Councillor Cisco,
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento,
Yes.
Councillor Townsend,
Yes.
Councillor Williamson,
Yes.
and Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
Carried unanimously.
Okay, and I just want to thank the Accessibility Committee for councillors. I know councillors spent some time reviewing the multi-year accessibility plan. When you look at what the Accessibility Committee has done with our staff, they've done an outstanding job working towards creating an even more accessible community than we are today. And so whether it's playgrounds or it's Moby mats or it's working with facilities management to create more accessible facilities, I just want to acknowledge the work of the committee. And they've been working even through COVID-19, they've been working as well. So thank you to the entire committee, and we'll send a thank you note from council as well. I'll look to the budget chair for the changes to the budget moving forward, and just to comment briefly on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to say thank you to council. Obviously, this has been a very different year when it comes to the budget, and the budget standing committee felt that it was an important change to make, moving to a budget process which has all of council as a part of it. So moving to the general committee structure with the budget going forward, I think is going to produce a better document that we can all be satisfied with. This is going to be a very difficult year, and I don't think anybody had any illusions otherwise, but I appreciate the support of council to make sure that this is something we all have a hand in going forward over the next couple of weeks. I'm looking forward to the telephone town hall and the feedback that we always get from that, and educating the community as well about the challenges that we're facing. But again, I appreciate the support that council has placed in the budget standing committee's recommendation, and I look forward to getting started very soon.
Thank you, Councillor Cisco. Appreciate that. And now we move on. There's no special presentations. We resolve into general committee. And I'll turn the floor over to our CAO and our deputy CAO, who will be talking about the COVID-19 update. A lot to talk about.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Yes, we have our 11th COVID update this evening. As I've said before, we do look forward to the meeting in which we find a COVID update isn't necessary. Unfortunately, we're not there yet. We began in April updating council on our measures, and in May we were turning our minds already to recovery. And shortly after that, we began planning for the report you see this evening that talks about our advanced planning for the resurgence as we are in the second wave. As we speak, we continue to take the virus very seriously while still focusing on recovering. We can hear from the mayor's report this evening that there's many activities our community continues to participate in and push forward, and we appreciate the many ways that our community members and those groups continue to contribute safely and keep things moving despite the challenges that we're facing. The city's control group and staff on all levels continue to work on all fronts to address the pandemic. The advanced planning team has created a plan titled our COVID-19 Resurgence Plan, which you find attached as Appendix 1 in the COVID report this evening. They have been meeting regularly since May and planning for this second wave, and we knew the importance of being prepared, as here we are. With guidance provided in more detailed version than our public document, the control group has commenced efforts to mitigate the impacts of this second wave. Our activities can be classified into two main strategies. The first being our defensive strategy, whereby we're using risk management and mitigative efforts to lessen the impact of the second wave. Some of the ways that we're doing that, first one being active screening. City of St. Catharines has transitioned towards active screening for COVID-19. From the early days of the pandemic, we've asked our employees to self-screen prior to arriving at their shifts of work. Communications and signage in our facilities enforce the protocol, in addition to many other protocols. Difference now is that we're requiring all staff and contractors to specifically confirm to us before entering one of our workspaces that they have self-screened and have answered no to all the self-screen questions. It'll help us ensure we're doing our part in preventing the spread of the virus. It means that they will be required to complete screening prior. And if it does take a little more time and attention, but it's vitally important that we all pause each day to consider our own health for our own safety as well as those we encounter throughout our day. The number of other defensive measures were listed in the document and include rotating our staff and increasing cross-training amongst them, increases in communications to both staff and the public, promoting staff to use the city's employee EFAP program, ongoing increased cleaning in facilities, increased in regulations within our city facilities and programming, and delaying the opening of the older adult centers, which you see listed in our document today. The second group of activities is an offensive strategy. If the resurgence of COVID-19 continues, the likelihood of the province requiring municipalities in Niagara to revert through to prior stages of reopening becomes high. Municipalities in the Toronto area are already experiencing this. We're keeping our eye on the fact that things could change. Municipal Emergency Control Group will decide whether facilities, programs, and/or services need to be reduced prior to being mandated by the Ontario government if it's necessary for the health and safety of staff and the community. As a specific example, we've made the decision to delay the opening of the older adult centers until further notice. Our CRCS department has done an outstanding job of keeping our community engaged through in-person programs with strict protocols and virtual programming. The Senior Centers Without Walls virtual programming for older adults continues to go strong, and the update for each session remains high. Also important to note, as case counts increase and necessary contact tracing is undertaken, it's very probable that our own workforce will be significantly affected. Central to our planning throughout this pandemic is planning for the possibility that sections of our workforce may be significantly depleted for periods of time, and we may have to reduce service provision even if provincial orders don't mandate it. As always, our leadership team is monitoring the situation. We've documented the steps we used to contract to essential services that previously were employed, and we've considered adjustments to those steps given the change in seasons, and we'll do that again if necessary. But all our defensive mitigation measures are in place to help us avoid having to make that decision. Regarding enforcement of orders, with Thanksgiving this weekend, the city is preparing for an increase in notifications from our community of non-compliance to the changes of the provincial emergency orders on gathering limits, etc. Staff will be available to receive calls, and bylaw enforcement will be available to respond to complaints during peak hours, identified peak hours. In addition, Niagara Region has offered to provide both support and advice to the lower tier municipalities on the enforcement of related bylaws and emergency orders. In the coming weeks, the Niagara Region Business Licensing Department will have inspectors staffed 7 days a week from 10 a.m. to 8:30, and staff are well trained and experienced in bylaw enforcement and the issuing of the charges and fines. We'll continue to receive the inquiries and complaints through appropriate channels, and when enforcement support may be required, then we can request this service from the region through contact information provided. We continue to support our businesses. We recognize that the resurgence of the virus will impact businesses who are already suffering in the situations from the previous number of months. The Economic Development and Tourism Services Department are continuing to support the business community in a number of ways. The Enterprise Center continuing to run the Starter Company Plus program, which includes business training, development of a business plan, eligibility for a grant of up to $5,000, and mentoring. Business have up to 1 year in operation are eligible to apply and participate in the program. The program is crucial as staff within the Small Business Enterprise Center have seen an increase in inquiries from those who are considering self-employment as a career option. Digital Main Street team will be providing one-on-one support to small Main Street businesses, building their online presence and accessing digital Main Street program supports. EDTS is also working with upper levels of government to secure funding support for small business sector. This week is Fire Prevention Week, as we heard from the Mayor's report, with fire prevention activities still taking place. The pandemic has caused an increase in the number of people cooking at home, making fire safety a priority. Fire prevention is working closely with corporate communications, CRCS, and other area partners to deliver programs and awareness in a safe and yet engaging manner. Our Safe Restart funding announcements: municipal operating funding is available of the initial phase of 1.39 billion to Ontario's municipalities to provide the supports needed to respond. A total of 695 million was allocated under phase 1 to all municipalities. As you all know, for our municipality, 3.62 million was received for municipal operations and 3.85 was received for municipal transit. The additional 695 million in phase 2 is it available to municipalities that can demonstrate the COVID-19 related financial impacts exceed the initial allocation in phase 1. On Friday, October 2nd, the Safe Restart phase 2 application template and guideline instruction document were made available through the Transfer Payment Ontario website, and the template and supporting documents are to be completed by October 30th. A team of staff will be working or are working towards completion in hopes it will result in the city receiving additional funding support to address our remaining gap. The application for the additional funding must be accompanied by a resolution of council, and this resolution for council will be presented as part of the agenda for our next council meeting. We recognize that we will not soon be out of this pandemic. While many of us certainly feel somewhat disheartened that we find ourselves in the midst of a rise in cases once again, we need to focus on all the many things we've learned this year. We're entering the second wave much more knowledgeable and prepared, and as city leadership, we are very thankful to see community members continue to practice all the safety precautions that made a difference in the spring and early summer. We continue to be grateful for the many city staff that continue to provide service to our community in a safe and responsible way. It's our responsibility as staff to stay motivated and engaged in efforts to make a difference. We're committed to that, and we thank council and the community for their participation and support in those efforts. Those are my comments this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you to the CAO. I have Councillor, a couple questions. Councillor Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the CAO. Do you know if the province has indicated what the turnaround time is for the phase 2 funding? I'm wondering if it would be available during our budget deliberations, so we know what kind of financial position we would be in going into next year. Thank you. That's my only question.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll defer to our Director of Financial Management Services to see what the timelines that they've given us.
Thank you. Through you, Through you, Mr. Mayor, with regards to the application deadline, as the CAO had indicated, the deadline is October 30th. And the reason for the tight turnaround time is that the province is being mindful of the municipality's year end of December 31st and wanting to receive the information from the municipalities that are in need that did not receive sufficient funding with regards to their phase the phase 1 funding that was announced in August. The province has been very clear in the documentations that they have sent from Minister Clark that municipalities only that did not receive adequate funding under phase 1 should be completing an application under phase 2. With regards to the city's financial position, we have been providing regular updates at each council meeting with regards to our financial position for 2020. Our most recent update, we had indicated that the tax levy impact was 800,000 and that the parking impact was an additional approximate 600,000. So at this point in time, it is estimated that the unfunded portion of the city's 2020 impact is estimated to be around 1.4 million. However, we will be taking the next 25 days to complete the information and providing the template information to the province and in our request for additional funding in phase 2.
Thank you very much, and thanks for your work on this.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, thank you to staff for all their work, and a follow-up question on what Councillor Porter asked. Some clarification, like we're saying that we're working on the report to apply for phase 2. but we're also saying in that report that we need to use a template that's provided by the province, and the province has yet to provide that template. So I don't understand how we can work on the report when we haven't got the template.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we did receive the template, and finance staff are working. We received it last Friday. It basically amounts to whole financial results similar to our year-end reporting we need to do now for forecasting and actuals, and it's a large amount of work. Our finance department has been working diligently at it. In some thanks to having to forecast so many times this year, they've got a lot of the basics done, but it is still a significant amount of work to complete essentially a year-end a number of times.
Okay, thank you. I was just going by the report saying it hadn't been received. So a question on communications, Mr. Mayor, through you, about the older adult centers reopening being delayed. Will we be issuing a media release or some other way to communicate this to seniors who may be expecting these to reopen, considering that so many of them are not on the internet or access to social media, so we need to make sure that they know, and we get a lot of questions about this.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll start and then I'll pass it over to Director Christie. Certainly, we have been in contact with our many seniors. In fact, there have been many seniors who didn't participate in previously in our senior centers, and our CRCS department has been in close contact with many of them. So I'll pass over to Director Christie.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, we will actually be meeting with the executive groups from each of the older adult centers on Wednesday afternoon to discuss the options that are available to our older adult residents. So to your question, Councillor, just because the centers are not opening does not mean that we're not offering programs. We are in fact offering programs either virtually or at the Port Weller Community Center or at Russell Avenue or at the Kiwanis Aquatic Center. So program options are available. It's just that those physical locations right now where most of the programming tends to be those in close quarters, you know, card games and those kinds of things. Those are the ones that we have the most sort of concerns with. But certainly whatever we do moving forward, we will be communicating.
Thank you. And Mr. Mayor, I'll ask for your direction on this. I have another communications question, but it's not necessarily COVID related. And I wanted to ask about what we're doing to communicate the change in garbage pickup coming up. And if you'd like me to, I can bring this up under new business.
So you've asked the question, and I'll have a member of the team say it's a regional issue. So I'll have someone communicate with you what the region's doing. They'll send an email to you and you can circulate it.
Okay, I understand it's a regional responsibility, but we are going to get a lot of questions and a lot of.
So that's what will happen is the information will be shared electronically, and then you can at least share it with people who contact you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Sorrento, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To senior staff, how much money are we applying for in phase 2 funding? At over 3 million?
We haven't, phase 2, that hasn't been determined yet, so they're still working on that. That'll come back on the 19th.
Okay, great. And then one final question, Mr. Mayor. I've read the report, and this can be directed to any one of our staff. The report mentions that there is a likelihood of the province reverting to prior stages, stage 2. Can we have staff speak to the likelihood of that and what their interpretation of that might be?
So that'll be from public health. Staff won't be able to speak to that. That's public health at the region. So all we're doing is watching what the region's public health director will say. It's not a staff decision at this time.
Okay, thank you.
And Councillor Williamson, you're up next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I don't necessarily need a detailed response to this, but we hear a lot of rumblings from the federal government about talking of coming out of COVID through a green recovery. And I know that we may not have a template for this either, or have anything solid foundation on which to go. I just hope that we looking at what options we have in terms of environmental opportunities and priorities going forward. If there's anyone that does have anything to add about that, I'd be happy to hear, but I just wanted to bring it to general attention.
So we have had a couple of reports that have been prepared by Director Smith and Director Martuccio regarding the city's climate change plan. And so I think if Director Martuccio can share that with the councillor, it does outline some of the opportunities that have been identified for greening, if you will, or reducing our carbon footprint.
Thank you. Has there been communication with the feds on this front at all? Or are we waiting to hear what they sort of are going to announce?
Well, I think it's the details that are being waited for now. And once they open up the stream, much like ISEP, which is the same concept around infrastructure, once those are opened, I'll turn it over to the CIO. There will be a list of projects that will come in front of council, I believe, for approval as well. To the CIO?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, we are monitoring the various programs as they are announced, and then when the details of funding applications come, and we have a staff group that is focused on developing the list of projects to fit with the applications, and we'll bring forward to council.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. I see no other further questions of council. So I'll ask for a motion to receive the CAO's presentation on COVID-19. Councillor Dodge, seconded by Councillor Garcia. Thank you. And as this is a discussion report for information, all in favor? Show of hands. And that's carried. Thank you for that. Okay, now we have financial management services, accounting and payroll, financial report and audit findings and observations for the year ending December 31st, 2019. Oh, what it would be like to go back to 2019. We have Lois Ouellette, and she is partner with KPMG LLP, and she'll be joined by Scott Pluggers, and he is senior manager. I'll start with our director of finance if she wants to provide some opening remarks, and then go over to the presentations.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No introductions needed. You've indicated our auditors from KPMG making the presentation, and we will be available for any questions that council may have after they have concluded their presentation.
Great, thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Maybe just a thumbs up, some head nod. Perfect.
Yep, good.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for having us tonight. It's just myself, so Scott Pluggers here with KPMG, and hopefully a familiar face to many. It would have been before you a little bit earlier last year for the 2018 audit, but Mr. Mayor, to your point, it's hard to say 2019 when we're close to December 31, 2020. But certainly, a lot did go into the completion of the audit. I'll just start with that. A number of factors had to come into play, from remote auditing to, kind of extreme collaboration with city management. So I first off just want to give a big thank you to the management team of finance and really across the city for all of those that we dealt with to really execute and complete this audit. So what I'd like to do this evening is just take you through a few brief overview rather of the audit findings report. And then certainly if there's any questions on anything I didn't touch on in detail or elaborate on, by all means, feel free to ask me any questions. So if we can move down actually 3 pages just to the executive summary. And there's Lois's picture there as well. Just unfortunately, she wasn't able to make it tonight. So there we go. That's great. Thank you. So with respect to finalizing the audit, we are substantially complete through our audit, save and except for a number of procedures that are really routine at this stage of each and every audit, regardless of the year end and the timing which we come before you, of which is the signed management representation letter, which just never happens until the statements are ultimately approved by council. Of course, completing our discussions with you tonight, and then obtaining ultimate approval of the financial statements via your approval. So once those are done, we are prepared to issue an unqualified audit opinion, or in other words, a clean audit opinion. So it's an important point to make there. If there are any items that are raised between now and the issuing of the financial statements that are of significant nature or matter, certainly we will bring those to your attention, but I'm not anticipating any concerns or issues. These are really just housekeeping items at this point. One other comment here on independence. So it is important each year that we do confirm to you our independence with respect to the city. There's a number of services and of course entities across the agencies, boards and commissions where we do provide services. So it's important that you're aware that we do have independence checks and balances and quality measures in place to ensure at all times that we do maintain our independence. So important to highlight that to you there. No real changes in your significant accounting policies in the financial statements for the year ended December 31, 2019. There was a new policy or financial standard rather under public sector accounting standards, but no impact to the city's financial statements. It's just important that you're aware of that. With respect to control deficiencies and other observations, so we have no deficiencies or control observations that we determine to be significant, but really just a few kind of observational points, some insights from the audit that go a little bit beyond the financial statements, which is important, which are highlighted to you in the report on pages 12 and 13. And then of course the audit differences that are summarized for you on page 11. Now the last comment here just on the impact of COVID-19, I mean, I won't read that to you and certainly just by listening to the preamble and introduction in the meeting, it's topic of each and every meeting for you and I can certainly appreciate that. Of course, it does rear its head in the financial statement audit in a number of ways. So actually, if we can move to the next, we're just going to move down, sorry, to two pages down, page 4 and 5. That's great. So these pages here, and again, I certainly won't read these to you in detail, but hopefully you've had a chance to scan through and provide a bit of a summary on the potential impact and considerations as it relates to the city's financial statements for December 31, 2019, and as well as the adjustment or the pivoting, if you will, in terms of how we were able to conduct the audit and complete the audit really in a remote environment. So that goes to a number of things through the use of secure share file sites for which KPMG has developed to really help facilitate the transmission of the data, which I felt is the most important aspect really in all of our remote audits is just how are we communicating with our clients and how are we sharing your information. So certainly that was something that was put in place from the start. And then kind of the constant communication with management to regular updates to ensuring that we're staying on track, meeting deadlines and so forth. So all of that said, no changes to the numbers that sit in your December 31st, 2019 financial statements. However, there will be subsequent event disclosure that you hopefully have seen in the financial statements that really just outline the facts as they stand as of today, which is the reality of certain operations and facilities have closed and then again have reopened, and that the city continues to monitor with the impact ultimately not known for some time. I mean, you're dealing with this on a daily basis, but certainly the magnitude and the impact in the financial statements is not yet known and shouldn't be quantified in the financial statements, hence why subsequent event disclosure is really all that's made its way into the financial statements as it relates to COVID-19. If we can just move down 2 pages. One more, that's great, thank you. So materiality, it's important that we provide materiality to you each and every year. And materiality has been set consistent year over year, no changes in the benchmark, no changes really in the approach or setting and judgment that's really been applied with respect to materiality. And of course, those figures are provided for you here, both for the current year and comparative for 2018 for your information as well. Okay, on to the next page. Audit risks and results. So this relates to estimates. So some of the more significant estimates that are contained in the city's financial statements, and estimates will certainly become a bit more of a focus over the next number of years as a result of a new auditing standard that's coming out. But this does provide you with a bit of an overview in terms of the audit work and the requirements that go into understanding the estimates that could have either estimation uncertainty or some other uncertainty around the ability to accurately present that number in the city's financial statements. So we are satisfied with the estimates as they are presented to you, both from a financial statement on the financial statements, as well as contained in the disclosures in the financial statements, but certainly a bit of information there for you as it relates to estimates, both on page 7 and then again on page 8 as well. Okay. And then if we can just move to page 9. Awesome, thank you. A bit of an overview for you on some of the more significant areas where we spend our audit time and audit effort. Not all encompassing by any means, but just really, again, the significant areas, whether it's due to government grants, of course, payroll being a significant expense for the city, and then tangible capital assets or your infrastructure assets as you continue to reinvest and upgrade your infrastructure assets. That's always an area from an audit perspective where we spend a considerable amount of time. In either case, though, certainly no significant findings to report, which happy to report that, of course. On page 10, Awesome, thank you. Maybe just a brief comment there on that second box around KPMG. It's a bit of a mouthful, Clara Client Collaboration, or KCCC, but just important to highlight there. That's the means in terms of which both ourselves and management worked together to be able to share the financial information as it relates to the audit. So just a comment on that. On page 11, just highlights for you the corrected audit adjustment in the city's financial statements. No concerns though or impact on our audit report or audit opinion, if you will, but it's important that we highlight any misstatements to you that are above our threshold, as I've mentioned on materiality. So that's why that is presented there for you. Okay. On page 12 and 13, so a few comments here really. I mean, hopefully, again, hopefully you'll trust that you've had a chance to look at this, so I'm not going to read it out in detail, but again, some observations both from our auditors, standpoint and what we see in getting into the details of your finances and financial transactions each year, and then as well as discussions with management and understanding whether it be pain points, areas of concern, just areas that may take a considerable amount of time with respect to financial reporting and operations as well, if that does happen to make its way into the audit. So that's summarized for you there with respect to the accounting software. No real comments. I'm certainly not going to make any IT related comments in this meeting, but a bit of an observation as it relates to the use of the software and potential considerations as reporting needs and desires both from council and the general public continue to evolve. This will become an increased focus for your financial management team to be able to, both from a timely and efficiency standpoint, be able to accurately report the numbers. Project closeout, again, just something we've discussed with management around continuing to review capital projects in place and ensuring the timely closeout of those projects. But really it stems from a finance piece, not from an operational piece. So just important to mention there. And then page 13, you can see some comments around the journal entry process and both around the city and the transit financial reporting, which we've highlighted to you there. No concerns overall, and certainly something we're continuing to support management as needed throughout our observations and throughout our audit. Okay, page 14, you're probably inundated with COVID resources by now, but KPMG does continue to invest a little bit in whether it be up-to-date trending topics, both from a municipal and public sector standpoint, and as well as a governance standpoint, and just a general business kind of overview and consideration. So by all means, this is really just for your information, but there's certainly some good insights there. One of the ones I'll mention there is the Return to Workforce or Workplace app that KPMG developed, which actually was rolled out to our firm internally today, but a really neat way for organizations both in KPMG and obviously outside KPMG to be able to track employees and the ability to monitor and from a safe and public health perspective, of course, but certainly if there's any requests for information on that, happy to provide some light reading at your leisure. And then the last comment I'll make on the audit findings report before any questions is just on the, oh great, thank you. Asset retirement obligations. So I believe when we came before you last year, which was a while ago now at this point, for the 2018 audit, we talked a little bit about asset retirement obligations and the standard that was upcoming and really the level of work that was going to be required both from finance and operations across the city. Thankfully, or not thankfully, depending on your view on it, I guess, due to the COVID pandemic, the standard setters have agreed to delay the implementation of all standards by 1 year. So certainly a bit of a relief on behalf of management, who of course are focusing on a number of things, and this really should not be a focus at this time. That being said, the standard implementation is now set for the December 31st, 2023 year end. I mean, still subject to change given the length and duration that this may continue on for, and we'll continue to update you as we get more information, but at least a little bit of a year and a little bit of a break. But again, this standard will still be coming, so sooner or later, we'll continue to look to have those discussions with management on potential implementation plans once this audit settles and then we move into 2021. The rest of our report really, again, provides a bit more detail on the current developments that are coming with respect to standards and some updates from public sector accounting standards, and then as well as our required communications, in our appendices to our report. So happy to take any questions at this time, either on this or the financial statements as well, if I can answer any.
Thanks, Scott. All right, so we got Councillor Sorrento. Do you have your hand up or no? I saw your, got to hit on mute. Oh, you got to hit on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Apologies. Got it. Mr. Mayor, to the presenter, do you care to comment on the Vailtech accounting software or no? I think I read some of the concerns that you outlined in the report. Did you want to comment on it? Do we need to replace it, or do you want to leave that for IT?
From an observation standpoint, in terms of seeing some of, I don't want to say struggle, just inevitable challenges that the management team and finance team face around both limitations for project accounting, capitalization, tangible capital assets. The fact there that simple statement of, your team is required to create on average 600 to 800 general ledger accounts each and every year, create a very exhaustive task and exhaustive exercise for management to both stay on top of everything that's going on in the accounts and general ledger, and then create some sort of timely review of that at the year-end process. It's a very long exercise for that financial management team. That being said, of course, there's a number of municipal dedicated accounting softwares that are out there, and it becomes a matter of a study, I think, or an assessment in terms of what are the needs and wants of management, what makes sense, and what type of reporting ultimately is management and council looking for to drive that decision. But in my view, there's certainly some efficiencies to be had from at least investigating or opening that discussion.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, to the presenter, then you're okay with the journal entry portion of your report to us?
I feel that, from our standpoint, there's certainly enough compensating controls around the level of review and details that are done by management, from the CAO all the way down to the finance team. So it doesn't necessarily concern us as auditors, but it's observations from really an operational standpoint as more pressures continue to be placed on financial management with the need and information wants out there, which are reasonable requests. Eliminating some of these more repetitive tasks that take a long time will go a long way in driving efficiencies in the finance function. Not saying that there isn't now, that I don't want it to be misconstrued in that way, but there's certainly with IT software, there's a number of enhancements over the years, let's put it that way, that can help management.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Pluckers.
Thank you, Councillor Sorrento. Councillor Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councillor Sorrento asked my question. I was going to ask our auditor if he's seen municipality transition from this older type of software towards a new type of software that can manage grant or fund accounting a little better. And if he's been involved in this type of transition, how long does a transition take to get the municipality and everybody onboarded into the process? Is it like a 1 or 2 or 3 year project?
I wouldn't say, there's no kind of defined answer, so it's hard for me to say. I don't want to answer it with it depends, but I mean, if you had to put a range on it, it's anywhere from 12 to 18 months. And it largely stems with the number of modules and add-ons that you want to go live with right off the hop, and whether or not you're actually going to do the type of implementation, which is just a hard and fast stop. Day one, day 365, you stop this one, and day one of the next year, you start a new accounting software. Are you going to run them together? There's a number of ways to get there to a successful implementation, but on average, the lead time from start to finish can be anywhere from 12 to 18 months. But I would say that is after you've identified a solution, and then you work that project plan through from initiation through to actual application, because there's training that's involved across the city. Once it gets up and running, you still have a lot of tweaks and things to work out. So it's a bit of a lengthy exercise for sure.
Okay, thank you very much. No further questions from me.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, all three of us focus on the same issue, and I just wanted to ask a related question on that Vailtech software. Staff has identified that a change would be significant in terms of staff time and increase maintenance and licensing costs. Do we have any kind of an order of magnitude of this? Are we talking a huge amount of dollars, or are we talking, I don't know if they can comment on that.
Sorry, Councillor Garcia, was that to myself, or I don't know if Christine, I don't, it might be hard for me to put dollars.
Either one of you, if you can provide some order of magnitude, and you may not be able to, but I was just wondering how large an amount we're talking about here.
So the presenter won't be able to. The presenter is only the auditor for KPMG not working in IT for the city of St. Catharines. I think that's a better question directed towards Ms. Douglas, and I'll allow for it here. And then if there's any further questions of staff, we'll maybe wait for the motion to come to the floor. Director Douglas.
Yeah, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. With regards to the cost for the financial accounting system, there is a range out there in the marketplace. However, in recent years, the number of suppliers of municipal financial software has contracted somewhat. Therefore, we are noticing that there is a significant increase in the acquisition costs of this type of software. So I don't have an actual figure for you, but it is in the millions of dollars that a new system would potentially cost the city. I will also take this opportunity to point out that the city in its work, we are very much aware of the age of our financial accounting system, and we have been working to look at what other municipalities are using. We have had discussions with them with regards to their RFP processes and their implementation processes for their accounting software. And we are also engaging in conversations with other municipalities looking at shared software opportunities. And so some of those options would be able to potentially be at a more reasonable cost for the municipality. So at this point in time, nothing's off the table.
Thank you very much. That's what I suspected, that it would be a large cost.
Thank you, Councillor Garcia. Councillor Littleton.
Thank you. I had one question that I think was answered earlier today. But you mentioned in the report about, well, actually I have two questions, but you mentioned in the report about the Transit Commission and numbers not really lining up. How would you suggest that that could be fixed? Because if it's flagged, it seems to be a problem. Either it's causing a lot of money to straighten it all out and there's nothing wrong with the numbers, but what do you suggest can be fixed here to make it more seamless?
Absolutely, yeah, and certainly that is the case in the sense that the numbers are there. It's not that anything's wrong. It's just how it's being accounted for. Let's say, and when you get to the actual, I don't want to get technical, but the debits and credits and where the entries are going within the accounting software. But long and short of things, that's something we're actively working on with management currently in terms of defining that. So we do have a process that we offer in terms of what we call lean and audit, but really it's looking at the process in its current state and then identifying how the optimal state and what that takes to get there in terms of reporting. And what it is really just a function of consolidation. So ultimately, as transit's consolidated into the city's consolidated financial statements, and of course the financial information return, there's a significant amount of time on behalf of management of the city to be able to ensure that that consolidation can happen. Now it does happen, but it's again just due to the underlying accounting and how there's slight and subtle differences at transit that ultimately make it very complicated when you have to fill out the financial information at the city. So we are working actively currently with management to help define what that process looks like to alleviate a lot of the concerns and stress that year end brings on the consolidation exercise. I don't know if that, hopefully that helps.
Okay, and just a second question. I know that now COVID-19 is just top of mind, and it has been obviously for the last 6 months or so, but why so many comments about COVID-19 in this report if it's for a period of time when essentially it didn't exist? So I'm just kind of wondering why so much focus on that in this report.
Well, I think a few things. I mean, it's certainly COVID-19 is going to be top of mind even in our 2020 audit. So there's a number of things we have to consider from an auditing standpoint. One is the impact on transactions. Even though it's subsequent to year end, it doesn't negate the fact that there could be potential issues with collection of receivables. Let's say if there was large outstanding tax appeals, large outstanding customer receivables, those are an easy one to pick on. When the pandemic hits and you're 6 months out and you realize you're not going to collect on any of those, we have to start to consider the potential impact of receivables. And similar for investments. I mean, it's a weird situation to talk about because the nature and how you account for your investments protect it to a certain degree in terms of the financial statement presentation, but the markets just in general are not doing as well as years past. So consideration needs to be given to investments for normal entities, let's say outside the public sector. And then aside from kind of your financial piece that we need to look at as it relates to COVID is just operationally what happens to financial controls. If you have management working at home or team members working remotely, inevitably there's going to be some impact on your internal controls as it relates to financial reporting, whether that be a slight change in processes, whether that be a change in controls or the approval levels and how that might work internally in terms of sharing information, IT concerns as it relates to the audit and potential implications as it relates to that, then that's an important factor that relates into our audit. I don't see how it could not be part of our audit.
Thank you. I guess I was just, I think I was just confused because it's for the period ending December 31, 2019, yes?
Yeah, correct.
Correct. So it didn't exist during that period. I think that's just what my question was. I mean, now looking at it 10 months later, we're looking at data 10 months later where everything is completely different. So I would absolutely expect that to be the number one focus of the 2020 audit. I think I was just surprised to see so much language about it for a time when it essentially didn't exist. That's just my.
No, sorry, I understand a bit more clear. Sorry. The issue is that you run into, so it's called subsequent events. And so anything that happens between your year-end date, so December 31st, and the date that the audit report is issued. So even up until today, I mean, if COVID happened in let's say July was the first time that, public health really started to push orders and get things in place, we would have had to have a significant update then to say, okay, what's the impact? Is there an impact? And I completely agree from an historical looking back standpoint, there is no impact to the December 31st numbers, let's say. But an assessment, anytime you have a subsequent event to that magnitude where things shut down and, recreation facilities, of course, is the easy one to identify. We have to consider that and just assess anything to do with the December numbers and consider if there's an impact. But I agree, yes, no impact from the 2019 numbers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Littleton. Seeing no further questions of the presenter, can I have a motion to receive the presentation? Councillor Phillips and Councillor Townsend. And I'll ask for receiving of the presentation. And does anyone want to make any further amendments to the recommendation related to the information that you've received? Now, I can't see everybody, so I apologize because it doesn't have, I'm just going to get it if anyone does. I'm not seeing anything. Okay, so I'll look to the clerk to call a question on this one.
For the motion, did we get a mover and seconder? Thank you. Okay. Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Cisco.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
And Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
Carried unanimously.
And so if it's the will of council, the direction that was brought up by Councillor Garcia regarding the costing, that will be included in the 2021 budget. I'll look to, there will be something in the budget presentation related to this, to the CAO.
Yes, certainly.
So when it does come in front of us, can we make sure to Director Douglas that this is flagged as a cost so that we could be aware that we're, as part of our risk management strategy, that this is something that we'll consider? Okay, so moving on from the two discussion items, and thank you to KPMG for that presentation. And council is reconvened. Motion to ratify forthwith recommendations. We have a motion that council adopt those items forthwith by general committee on Monday, October 5th. Moving this, I have Councillor Miller. Thumbs up.
So moved.
And Councillor Littleton, seconded. Okay. All in favor? Show of hands. That is carried. Okay, now we have motions. 10.1, additional restrictions to the city's mask bylaw. Councillor Porter, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've received several phone calls and emails from people, and many of them senior citizens who live in apartment buildings who are very concerned that the mask bylaw doesn't apply to their buildings, especially the elevators and the laundry rooms, where they're sometimes in a confined space without proper ventilation around other people. And a lot of these folks, have to get out and they have to do things like do their laundry. They don't have anyone else to do it for them. And they asked council, or they asked me if I would consider expanding the bylaw in the same way that Toronto has expanded its bylaw simply to include the common areas of long-term rental accommodations. Previously, our bylaw spoke to short-term rental accommodations, but I think that it makes a lot of sense to expand this to long-term accommodations like condominiums and apartments. And I hope the rest of council will agree, especially since the case numbers are on the rise. And we just got news today that there has been a COVID death. And I think this is part of us doing everything possible to make sure that we're responding to the pandemic in an agile way, and having to change bylaws if we need to make sure we're addressing all of the risks. So it's here, it's just updating this section of the city's bylaw. And I understand that the province has made masks mandatory, but the province did not speak to these areas in long-term accommodations. And I think that our bylaw needs to address that.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Porter. I'll look to the clerk just for clarification on the process. If we were to approve this today, what does this trigger?
This would trigger, through you, Mr. Mayor, this would trigger a public meeting because it's a regulatory bylaw. So we talked earlier today that this could be a separate meeting where we would have the meeting just on this subject.
Okay. And I have a question from Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'm a little bit confused here with I understand what the motion is asking for, but with the province, the region, the municipality, is the bylaw not in effect for all indoor spaces? That's my question.
So I can start. The region, although both myself and Mayor Redekop brought up the need to include common spaces in condominiums and apartments, rental accommodations, it wasn't included in their bylaw for some reason. So because it's not explicit, we can't enforce it. And the cities was silent on it as well. So what you're seeing is municipalities updated it to include the common areas inside those places where people can congregate. So it's not a public space. It's not a public space because it's private property. Public space is defined where people can go in and out. When you get into a condominium or a rental, the doors are locked unless you're let in. And so so our bylaw doesn't extend into that when it's just for public spaces, because technically that is not a public space that Joe Q Public can just walk into a condominium complex. They have to be buzzed into the common area. So that's why that's why there's just an amendment to the language.
Okay. I guess my question would be like the hotels, motels, they would be considered businesses. Gyms would be considered businesses. And doesn't the bylaw not cover businesses?
No, public spaces. They define it as public spaces.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Sorrento.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Solicitor Salter, can I get a legal opinion on this? I do want to support Councillor Porter's motion, but can you just comment on the legality of this, if we can do this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. Most of the bylaws and Ministry of, or sorry, Medical Officer of Health instruction letters or orders have excluded common areas of residential apartment buildings or condominiums on the basis that they are dwellings. And that is why that they have been treated differently. So the concern is whether or not there is jurisdiction to regulate in that area. Nevertheless, Toronto has gone ahead and included this amendment in their bylaw, and my understanding is that Ottawa has as well. So they have moved forward, notwithstanding that ambiguity. And as Mayor indicated, it's certainly not included in our current bylaw or the region's bylaw, and not clearly provided for in the new regulations from the province.
Okay, that's fine. I will be supporting the motion, Mr. Mayor and Councillor Porter. Thank you, Solicitor Salter.
Okay, I'm looking for my list. No further questions on this. I just want, from council's perspective, if this does go forward, and it looks like it will, is there an interest to have a quick special meeting on this? Our next meeting is not until October 19th. It is October 5th today. We are in the middle of a second wave. If we think this is important and prudent for our community to take an additional step, which I think it is, would there be interest of having a quick, half-hour meeting on a Zoom platform where we just consider this? It's a public meeting, so someone can delegate if they want, but we can just consider this item, then close the meeting and move on. If there's an interest,
Yes.
do that. Okay, so Councillor Kushner. So what we'll do, the city clerk will poll council tomorrow, and we can do it in the next 3 days. We can do this type of meeting. So, Councillor Garcia, do you get your finger up?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I certainly support this, but I'm happy to have a special meeting, but I'm just wondering through you to the clerk about notice requirements for such a public meeting.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is a notice bylaw meeting, so it's only approximately, I believe it's public notice requirements, and I think it's about 48 hours for a special meeting, so I'll have to double check.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, we could do it this week if council approves this. And the meeting would just be for that item only, and we would host it. So seconded by, who's the seconder of this, Councillor Littleton. So I'll look to the clerk to call the question on this.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Cisco.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
And Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
And that's carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you for that, council. And we'll move on to 10.2, development approval requirements. And this is Councillor Dodge. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Shall I read the motion?
Yeah, the motion's in front of council. It has been published, so
Okay.
you can read it or you can do the therefore. So if you want to just go to the therefore be it resolved, you can do that.
Okay. Therefore be resolved that the City of St. Catharines call upon the Government of Ontario to amend Bill 197 COVID-19 Economic Recovery Act 2020 to eliminate the development and approval requirement provisions from adjacent municipalities, and that the host municipality be empowered to render final approval for landfills within their jurisdiction. And be it further resolved that a copy of the motion be forwarded to Premier Doug Ford, Jeff Urich, the Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks, Steve Clark, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, local MPPs, the Association of Ontario Municipalities, and Ontario Big City Mayors, formerly Large Urban Mayors, Caucus of Ontario, LUMCO. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to all Ontario municipalities with a request for supporting motions to be passed by respective councils, and copies of supporting motion be forwarded to Premier Doug Ford, Jeff Urich, the Minister of Environment, Conservative and Parks, Stephen Clark, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the local MPP, and the Association of Municipalities.
Thank you, Councillor Dodge. And any questions on this before Councillor Dodge will wrap it up? Councillor Porter.
Thank you. I read through this. I just want to gain a greater understanding. So if say the city of Thorold wanted to put a landfill up on top of the escarpment, for argument's sake, that was in 3.5 kilometers of the border of city of St. Catharines, you're saying it wouldn't be a good idea for us to have a say, like it should be that the city of Thorold should have the final approval. So I'm reading this as it would limit the city of St. Catharines rights to be able to have a say on landfill. And I don't see where we would, inside our own municipality, where there'd be even room to entertain a landfill. So I think this would affect us more than it would affect another municipality in terms of having a say. Can I get some clarification on that to the mover?
Okay, so I'm going to try and answer the question. I'm not sure if I totally understand it, but I think that if you have concerns about, say, Thorold was doing it, there's a lot of checks and balances that are in place whenever there's a landfill request by anyone. So whatever municipality is asking for that, there's C of A's and there's many processes that go through that protect any surrounding municipalities. And I think that during this with this motion, it could be, if this is allowed to move forward, there could be other things that they come forward and say, okay, you know what, other municipalities have a right to say what's, you can and cannot do within your municipality. So I think the fear is that, during all of the processes that they have to go through, and then all of a sudden another municipality can say, well, no, we don't want it there for whatever reason, and then it stops the process.
Okay, I think I understand the response and the issues around lack of landfill space in Ontario and trying to avoid like a NIMBYism situation. Again, I just worry that St. Catharines, I don't think is a municipality that could entertain a landfill, but we could be a municipality that could have a landfill very near our border. And I would actually want us to be able to have a say in a landfill that's within 3 kilometers. So I'm not sure if I'm comfortable supporting this, but I hope that other people have questions about this.
So it's one of the greatest concerns is the veto. And once you entertain Bill 197 has a veto in it for neighboring municipalities. So even if the host municipality has done all of the required work with the upper levels of government and the environmental agencies to ensure the safety of something like a landfill, a neighboring municipality just can decide, no, you can't have that. And that I think is the overreach that a lot of people are pointing at when it comes to the current government, is that there's an extensive amount of overreach that they're providing for municipalities that are neighboring these kind of facilities. So I think, and what this motion does is gets it up to the province, but also to Association of Ontario Municipalities. And Councillor Dodge is on the board of that. And she's also on the Waste Management Committee. So it gets it on their agenda to start talking about what is the long-term impact of those veto rights? Because currently in this bill, the veto is already there. We're asking for that to be re-examined and the impact that it could, negative impact it could have moving forward. Further questions? Councillor Kushner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would submit that the motion is very well crafted. It appreciates local autonomy. We would still have our input, but for another municipality to have veto over what we do internally, I think that's going too far. So I certainly support the motion put forward by Councillor Dodge.
Thank you, Councillor Kushner. Okay, seeing no other further questions, I'll look to the clerk to call the question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, did we get a seconder, Councillor Dodge?
Second, if you want.
Councillor Harris?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
Councillor Garcia?
Yes.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Councillor Kushner? Councillor Kushner?
Yes.
Councillor Littleton?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Councillor Cisco?
Yes.
Councillor Porter?
No.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento?
Yes.
Councillor Townsend?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
And Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
And that's carried.
Okay, 10.3 additional council meeting. Councillor Littleton, you're up. It's probably the most contentious one of the evening.
Yes, sorry, I'm just going to go to my other computer here. So that council approve an additional meeting for the 2020 council meeting schedule, and that the meeting be held for the purpose of training regarding the city's draft transportation master plan. And that the meeting be held on Tuesday, November the 24th at 2020, commencing at 6 p.m. And that the city clerk advise the members of council by November 17, 2020 of the details of the meeting, including time and location, and if the meeting is to be held in person. And that the city clerk be directed. Sorry? The city clerk be directed to make the necessary notifications. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Now, can I just check again if the meeting to be held in person? So we don't have to hold it in person. I'm just getting okay, so that's good. All right, any questions on this one? Councillor Phillips?
No, I don't. I was just putting my mic on.
Okay. Seconded by Councillor Phillips.
Sure.
Maybe a special notification to former Councillor Elliott that this is coming up so that he can.
12 years in the making.
He'll remind us every time 12 years taken to get here. Okay, so can we just have a show of hands on that one? That was a housekeeping. Thank you, Councillor Littleton, for bringing this forward. Looking forward to that. That should be a good discussion. And I think Director Martuccio will be up to plate on that one, or is it Director Smith?
No, that's through you, Mr. Mayor, that will be coming from our department.
All right. Looking forward to that. Okay, so notices of motion. Councillor Porter, do you have a notice or do you have a direction for staff?
I have a notice of motion related to vehicle noise. I sent it in as a motion for this meeting, but we decided to put it in as a notice instead. And it's asking that the Niagara Regional Police expand its loud and clear program that strongly enforces the Highway Traffic Act related to loud vehicles and vehicles that are modified to make noise, which is becoming an increasing concern. So other municipalities have stepped, other police forces across the province have stepped this up, and the NRP is doing it in Niagara Falls and Niagara-on-the-Lake. And I'm hoping that council will consider asking the NRP to expand it into St. Catharines, and we can add more enforcement on this.
Okay, so if it's the will of council, it's only 7:24. This is a request for the Niagara Regional Police to expand something that they already have in operation in Niagara Falls, Niagara-on-the-Lake. You want to waive the rules for the notice of motion? Are we comfortable as a council that this request would go to Niagara Regional Police to bring the loud and clear to St. Catharines? Is there an interest for that?
Yes, by all means.
Okay, so we need a
Yes.
motion first to suspend the rules, right, to the city clerk. Okay, so Councillor Littleton is making the motion, seconded by Councillor Sorrento. So right now we're just suspending the rules to allow this motion to the floor tonight. All in favor of that, of the suspension of the rules? That's carried. And so we'll allow the motion now to be on the floor. And waive the rules to suspend, it was Councillor Littleton and Councillor Sorrento. And then Councillor Porter, you have a seconder? And Councillor Kushner had his hand up for that. Okay. Now, it is quite self-explanatory, but I know Councillor Williamson, you had a similar agitation with loud cars and stuff. So does this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In fact, I sent a message that I was going to just do it as a request for report, but this might even be better. My thoughts are that it should be a little bit broader. Our daily newspaper, The Standard, did a good editorial on August the 20th, talking about noise disturbances. These modified muffler vehicles, they are the bane of a lot of people's existence right now, but there's also a lot of other sources of noise from non-motor vehicles. So I think the City of Toronto, some other municipalities are looking for alternate ways to deal with noise issues. So I don't know if we could potentially expand it to include at least a reach out to other municipalities to see what they are doing to deal with these similar kinds of problems.
So we'll focus this one just on the expansion of Operation Loud and Clear, and then under report requests, how about you introduce that just to direct staff to look at what other municipalities are doing about overall noise pollution. Want to do it that way, Councillor Williamson?
Good, thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I have some clarification of what Operation Loud and Clear means? Councillor Williamson and I get lots of complaints about noise, particularly on Main Street in Port Lucie, but I'm sure it happens everywhere.
I'll go to Councillor Porter, who's the one who's been following this.
Yes, and I do have a full motion already prepared. I just forwarded it to Evan and Bonnie just now, so I don't know if they want to pull it up. Project Loud and Clear, or Operation Loud and Clear, was launched in Niagara Falls. And it's a program involving vigilant enforcement of Section 77 of the Highway Traffic Act. And that section of the act is every motor vehicle or motor assisted bicycle shall be equipped with a muffler in good working order and in constant operation to prevent excessive or unusual noise and excessive smoke. And no person shall use a muffler cutout, straight exhaust, gutted muffler, Hollywood muffler, I don't even know what those are, bypass or similar device upon a motor vehicle or motor assisted bicycle. So the fines for this are about $85, which I don't know what council thinks, but I don't think it's enough. So I also added in the motion that I would like to see an increase to the fines. So I'm asking that we send this motion to the Premier and to the Minister of Transportation, and that the government consider a steep increase in provincial fines under the Traffic Act. So we can't determine those fines as a region or a lower tier municipality. It's really up to the province. But I don't think people are going out spending a lot of money to modify their cars. So what's an $85 fine? I actually think given the increase in complaints, we really need to not just enforce, but increase the fines as well. So I hope council would support that. And I'm all in favor of looking at other ways and seeing what other cities are doing if they're changing their noise bylaws. I haven't seen anything that's could be implemented effectively, but I think this is a great first step. But I'm happy to add asking for some kind of report to see what other municipalities are doing.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Councillor Porter. Mr. Mayor, are we actually voting on this expanded motion?
Yeah, well, it's been sent over. I think the spirit's still there. We can't increase the fines. That's simply just a letter being sent to the province saying, consider that. The rest of it is pertaining to the actual Loud and Clear and what they do. So it's not changing.
Thank you.
Councillor Kushner?
Yes, I do have a question, Mr. Mayor. And the modification, I gather, for the most part, is done by auto shops. And if the noise is considered to be illegal, then why is there not punitive action taken against the auto shops that do the modifications? Perhaps the solicitor can respond to that.
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Kushner. This is the Highway Traffic Act, and it regulates the motor vehicles and the operators and owners of motor vehicles. So it would not generally deal with a business that performs those functions. I'm not aware of any other provincial regulation that would.
Is that realistic to go after the ones that do the modifications?
I think you'd have to do like a sting operation and pretend that you're getting a modified muffler and then go in and sort of fake it and then bust the guy for doing it, because it'd be hard to do, Counselor. It will, I'm not, but it would be hard to, like, unless there's a big sting by the NRP to find out who's actually doing modifications. And considering the age of some of these young people who are driving these cars, they're probably in their parents' garage, I think. Just saying. Anyway.
Thank
I'm
you.
still looking up Hollywood mufflers, so I'm still looking that one up, just so you know. Okay, any further? Councillor Williamson. Oh, and then Councillor Harris.
Yeah, I just want to say, I mean, this is I appreciate Councillor Porter bringing this forward in a very comprehensive fashion, put a lot of thought into it. This is a really detrimental issue in terms of affecting people's quality of life. I mean, the change has been very noticeable, and that's, as Councillor Kushner said, and others have. We're all getting calls, and this is not something that people should have to tolerate. It's just wrong.
Yeah. Councillor Harris, I think you got a conflict.
I was just going to declare a conflict and suggest that perhaps Joe and I take his Chrysler and we'll soup it up and do our own sting operation. How's that? But I have a conflict.
Kushner and the kid.
Yep. The A-team.
Okay. If I see no further hands up, we'll call the question on the motion. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Harris, your conflict is?
Son works for the NRP.
Yep.
Thank you. And Councillor Porter, do you have a seconder? Councillor Williamson, would you like to second?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Cisco.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
And Mayor Senzik.
Yes.
And that's carried.
Watch out, all those muffler people. We're coming. All right. Thank you for that. And it just, again, I appreciate council's indulgence on that, because it does take it off next council's agenda if that council agenda does fill up as well. Report requests. Councillor Williamson, you're asking staff to do some exploratory work around the noise pollution and what other communities are doing to reduce noise overall.
Yeah, I think Councillor Porter's motion gets to the crux of this, but if there's some other issues that other municipalities are looking at, I think it might be helpful to find out. It's a sticky wicket. It's really difficult, and enforcement is hard. So, but I know that there are some other municipalities trying some stuff, and I haven't had time to research it myself. If staff could do a little bit of digging, it would be great. Thank you.
Okay. Any other report requests? Okay. Seeing none. We have the ABCs, agencies, boards, and committee reports. A motion that council receive and file the minutes of the ABCs as presented. And moving the motion, I have Councillor Porter and seconded by Councillor Cisco.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. And all in favor? Carried. Okay, just in terms of some board updates from transit, Councillor Miller or Councillor Dodge, do you have anything on transit? Okay, great. Councillor Littleton on folk arts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Folk Arts Board, the Folk Arts Festival, as you know, was canceled because of COVID-19. And what they've done, though, is try to do some different programming. And one thing that's coming up is, I know everybody gets excited about the open houses because they get to sample all the foods. So this October, from the 16th to the 30th, everybody can order online and order the food and then go pick it up. So the clubs that are participating is the Folk Arts Multicultural Center, Slovenian Lipa Park, Club Roma, Club Italia, Niagara Hindu Semaj, and Armenian Community Center. So if you go to the website, and actually Councillor Dodge, who is also a member at large on the committee, she and I both recorded some videos. So look for Councillor Dodge, her social media video. She did a great job, I saw it. And so all the menu and food details will be on the Folk Arts Festival website, and that is www.folk-arts.ca/festival. And then in November, for the people like myself who love sweets, pastries, cakes, that kinds of things, you can have, they're calling it Sweets to the Folks. And so you can do the same thing. You can order a sampler box and have it and pick it up for curbside delivery. So that's what's going on at Folk Arts Festival.
Wow, great. I'm hungry already just thinking about that. Thank you, Councillor Littleton. Anything from the library?
Yes. I don't know if Councillor Williamson had anything he wanted to say first.
Thank you. Well, there's a lot of different programs, including trying to get children to read 1,000 books before they get to kindergarten. I would love to see that happen. Really, they're multilingual collection. There's just one initiative after another. Lots of good dynamic stuff coming out of this term in the library board. I'll pass it over to Councillor Littleton.
That's great. Thank you, Councillor Williamson.
Thank you. I'm just going to read very quickly something that the CEO, Ken, had prepared. So just very quickly, that the library changed its service model and was able to provide virtual reference services, online programming, and digital support in the first couple of weeks right after the COVID. So I just want to give you a little bit of an update. Library staff introduced virtual membership and ramped up streaming/digital services offered to patrons. So that's like Hoopla and other downloading services that you could get the books from, because you couldn't physically get the books. So the library quickly pivoted and went to that online portal to allow people to get downloads. And sometimes there's only so many downloads. So they bought more of the same book so that people could circulate that. The library has worked collaboratively with the city and the union to address questions and concerns related to staffing, health and safety, and service delivery. With the city's support, the library got plexiglass and signage installed at all locations prior to reopening. The library was able to efficiently and safely reopen its branches and services ahead of many public libraries in the region, which is wonderful. We should really be proud of the work that's going on at the library. We really are at the front of, through this COVID pandemic, just really being first to do things in the province, certainly in the region. And the library, we talked about this last time, the library reintroduced Monday hours after 43 years. That's unbelievable because I'm 46. So that's just crazy that we didn't have Monday service for 43 years to enhance services in the community. And just future plans, the library has been affected by the pandemic and is on the road to recovery. The board and the staff are going to work with all stakeholders to ensure the library emerges stronger and provides enhanced services and programs to the community. We are going to review and realign the library's strategic plan to reimagine the role of the library and help build a resilient future. Use the Central Library Infrastructure Space Review. This is really exciting, actually. It was completed in May 2020 as a guideline to modernize the Central Library, and continue to communicate and partner with community organizations to identify service gaps, rethink what the library can offer, and ensure that we are still relevant, and also develop tools to support evidence-based, data-driven decision-making. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No, that's great. Thank you, Councillor Littleton. Learned a lot there, including that you're older than Councillor Sorrento. So,
sorry.
Okay, I'll look around to see what I got. Councillor Townsend or Councillor Garcia for the pack. You guys.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I guess while you sit and have some culturally inspired food from folk arts, you can tune into the FirstOntarioPack.ca's website to see some of the stellar online programming that they do have. 3 events that are coming up. I encourage councillors to check out. October 7th, we have Improv Niagara. If you want some funnies that night, you can jump on and watch some online comedy. October 15th, we have Waterwood Theatre, who's going to be presenting shadow puppetry for all you artists out there. And my upcoming favorite event will be the October 17th event, which is Gord's Legacy. It's a hot ticketed free online concert, which will have guest artists performing their favorite tragically hip songs. So make sure to jump on after you order some culturally inspired folk arts food.
Great. Thank you for that.
Thank
Councillor
you.
Garcia, do you have anything to add
Yeah.
to the form here?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we just had a board meeting last week, and in conjunction with the senior staff and the executive director, we wanted to summarize what the PAC strategy is for the remainder of 2020. So we want to balance the importance of investment in artists and artistic development, support our local arts community with a commitment to the artists, represent Black, Indigenous, people of color, and other marginalized communities, continue online offerings, as Councillor Townsend has pointed out, and a careful return to limited and modified safe in-person performances and gatherings. In terms of government relations, continue to advocate for the arts, culture, and tourism industry safe return, economic comeback and sustainable funding. Continue to work with our main partners, the city and Brock University, to offer services. And finally, as one of the busier performing arts centers in Ontario during COVID times, we will continue to balance risk with our commitment to serving our mandate in a fiscally responsible and prudent way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garcia. Nothing further, I don't think, from any other agencies and boards that want to put anything out there. Okay, I don't see anything, and we'll move on from there. And we'll now resolve in the general committee. We do have an in-camera session, so we do have in-camera for this meeting. We have 2 items for consideration, so I'll look for the clerk to read it into for the public record.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. This evening we'll be going into camera for Niagara Ice Dogs Meridian Center License Agreement in camera pursuant to Bylaw 2015-170 as amended, Section B20.3K for a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board, and labor relations update, Local 485 Fire Arbitration Award, grievance 2019-01, line of duty death, LODD, and accidental death and dismemberment insurance. And that's in camera again pursuant to the same bylaw as above, labor relations or employee negotiations, section B 20.3D. And by attending the in-camera session, each member of council acknowledges that their obligations under the Code of Conduct, including responsibilities related to the confidentiality of closed session materials and discussions, remain the same as if they were physically present at the meeting. This includes that members of council are not permitted to record the proceedings and that they must ensure that no other person can see or hear any of the confidential deliberations taking place this evening. Thank you.
Motion to move in camera, Councillor Harris, and second by Councillor Cisco. All in favor? Okay, and then we're going to go to the breakout room. So when you get to the room, just hit the button and we'll go to the room. Okay, so we're recording and we've got some motions on the screen. And this is the first motion, 15.1. And that direction to be carried out by the CAO and deputy CAO. And I need a mover and a seconder for this. My apologies. I don't have the full screen over here for all the councilors. Councillor Townsend and seconded by Councillor Sorrento. All right. Let's do a vote on this one, obviously, because it's one for staff. I'll look to the clerk for the vote.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Cisco.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
And Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
And that's carried.
Okay, 15.2. And this is that council approved staff recommendation contained in report CSS 136/2020 regarding labor relations update, local 485 fire arbitration award. And so I need a mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Miller, seconded Councillor Littleton. Okay, I'll look to the clerk to call the question on this one.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Cisco.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
And Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
And that's carried.
Okay, so we have one more motion, and that's really just to receive.
Just heard you say yes.
And it's not this one, yeah. And so this is just the presentation that we received earlier by Watson and Associates. So this is just the receiving of that for education purposes. Just need a seconder, mover, Councillor Phillips, seconded Councillor Cisco. And this one is just education. So all in favor, just show of hands. Okay, that's carried. And we move on to bylaws, reading of bylaws. We have a motion that the bylaws listed on council agenda A to K be read and first time considered and passed, that they be signed and executed by the mayor and city clerk. Councillor Townsend, birthday, Councillor Sorrento, the birthday guy, is moving this, and seconded by Councillor Townsend. All right.
So moved.
And all in favor? That's carried. And then for adjournment, so Councillor Sorrento, I'll give you the honor. In your
Thank you.
37 in your
Thank you.
37
So
years.
moved, Mr. Mayor. Motion to adjourn. I'm 45.
Yes, Councillor Garcia.
Mr. Mayor, I had pulled an item from consent that I want council to endorse.
All right, I forgot about it. That didn't, that wasn't on my script. I apologize for that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's already been done. We've already endorsed the motion, Councillor. Did you want to speak to it? We endorsed it in.
No, I
We-
didn't
we
realize we
changed-
had endorsed it. I thought we had to
Yeah.
vote on it separately.
We did correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rebecca. We have already done
Yes, it's
so.
part of the
Okay.
motion. It's
Thank
part
you.
of the council correspondence motion.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And the birthday wish is council's command. So all in favor of ending the meeting and wishing Councillor Sorrento a happy birthday, all put up their hand.
Thank you.
Is anyone opposed to that? There goes Councillor Miller.
Thanks for center shotting me, Mr. Mayor. I love it.
Have a great night, folks.
Ciao.
Take care.